So here's a thought for you. What if I told you that the person who's always rushing, who can't stand to wait for anything, and the person who can never seem to get started are actually driven by the exact same hidden force? I know, it sounds totally backwards, but it's a really powerful insight that connects two behaviors we thought were polar opposites.
I mean, really think about it. On one side, you have the rusher, and on the other, the delayer. One is all gas, the other is all brakes. So what on earth could they possibly have in common? Well, that's the big question we're going to dive into.
And yeah, we all know these two, right? The rusher is that person who's often seen as ambitious, super driven. The delayer, well, they usually get labeled as lazy or maybe unmotivated. But what we're going to see is that these are just two different masks hiding the very same fear. Let's start with the rusher. It's so easy to mistake impatience for ambition, you know? But when we really dig into what's going on underneath, we find something a little darker than just being in a hurry.
This quote just nails it. Impatience isn't really about being efficient. It's a gut-level, visceral reaction from our ego. It's basically our inner self throwing a fit and demanding that the entire world operate on our personal schedule right this second.
Come on, we've all been there. You're stuck in that slow cafe line, you're late, you can feel your chest getting tight. Are you thinking, oh, that poor new barista, they're probably so stressed? No way. Your entire world just shrinks down to a single selfish thought. Hurry up, you are in my way. And that frustration, it's not just a bad mood, it has a real physical cost. Your impatience literally triggers a mini fight or flight response in your body. Your stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline just soar, your blood vessels tighten up. Over time, living in that state is linked to some really serious health problems. Your impatience is literally hurting you from the inside out.
Okay, so how does this frantic, rushing person connect back to the one who's stuck on the couch? This, my friends, is where we find the big twist, the perfectionism trap.
So the engine driving this whole trap is something psychologists call the illusion of omnipotence. It sounds fancy, but it's really simple. It's basically a belief left over from when we were babies. You know, a time when we cried and boom, our needs were met almost instantly. It's this deep, subconscious assumption that the universe is supposed to bend to our will.
Honestly, the best way to think about it is that there's an overgrown baby living inside our adult brain. And when reality doesn't immediately give us what we want, that inner baby throws a massive emotional tantrum. That flash of rage you feel in the coffee line? That's it. That's the overgrown baby screaming for what it wants, and it wants it now.
Okay, this is the real aha moment. It all comes down to the same fear, a fear of imperfection. But the ego has two different escape routes. The impatient person tries to force the perfect result by rushing and bulldozing through everything. The procrastinator, on the other hand, tries to avoid an imperfect result by just not starting. One rushes to control reality, the other delays to protect the fantasy of a perfect outcome. But look, both are terrified of a messy, flawed process.
And this quote, wow, it just perfectly explains the procrastinator's side of that fear. So often isn't actually failure that we're scared of. It's what that failure might mean, that we aren't all powerful, that we have limits. So by putting things off, we give ourselves a built-in excuse, right? We're protecting our ego from having to face its own very real, very human limitation.
So if we're all caught in this perfectionism trap, how in the world do we get out? Well, the good news is there's a really practical, actionable mindset we can adopt, and it's called the 60% start.
60%. That's it. Not 100%, not even 80, just 60. So what does that actually mean in practice?
It means you literally give yourself permission for your first try to be just okay. It means you accept right from the beginning that the first draft is going to be imperfect. The whole goal is to shift your focus away from perfection and onto progress. And this last part is so crucial. You have to understand that clarity doesn't come before you act. It emerges through the act of doing. You have to start moving to see the path ahead.
It's so simple, but so true. You can't edit a blank page. That messy, imperfect 60% start isn't a failure. It's the raw material. It's the only thing you can work with to eventually get to that great finish. Action, even flawed action, is always the way forward.
So what actually happens when you start living this way? Well, the payoff is huge. And it doesn't just affect your work, it affects your whole sense of well-being. Let's look at the benefits.
When you finally let go of that need for perfection, you'll find that your relationships actually get deeper and more authentic because you're not demanding the impossible from other people anymore. Your own creativity will spike because you're not afraid to just experiment and make a mess. And maybe the biggest one of all, you'll feel this huge reduction in your own stress, anxiety, and guilt. And that leads to a real, lasting peace of mind.
This quote just captures that feeling so perfectly. When you release that frantic, desperate need to control everything and prove yourself, your world doesn't shrink, it actually expands. Your mind finally gets a chance to breathe, to calm down. You finally stop fighting reality, and you start flowing with it.
So, that brings us to the final question, and this one is really for you. Just take a second and think about one thing you've been putting off, or maybe something you've been rushing through, all because of that deep down fear of it not being perfect. What 60% start are you going to embrace this week? Because taking that first, messy, imperfect step, well, that is often the most powerful and liberating move you can possibly make.